Good evening. My name is Gwendolyn Joy. Today is Sunday, March 2nd of 2025. I've done this video before on Super Bowl Sunday, but I cannot find where that is on my phone, and I guess I didn't upload it to my YouTube channel, so we'll be giving her a reshot now. I will be going over cases 1 and 4 for our case 2 connections, and let's get started. So in case 1, we are referring to, it's a two-part question. And so for part 1, I'll be discussing the Privet and kinesis regulation. So first, the Privet kinesis is a key enzyme in glucose, and it is regulated through a combination of allostatic regulation, covalent modification, and hormonal control. These ensure the glucose metabolism adapts to cells' energy needs and the stops when energy stores are sufficient. The recipients to prevents the unnecessary glucose breakdown and makes the optimal use of metabolic resources. And then the Privet kinesis is mostly regulated through the allostatic regulation by various metabolites. These are including the substrate phospholipids, so PEP, phosphorylation depending on the specific isoform and a cellular context, which with the liver-specific L type being particularly sensitive to hormonal regulation via phosphorylation, while the M2 isoform found in the cancer cells often display a low activity state due to its unique structural characteristics, potentially deriving metabolic flux towards biosynthetic pathways instead of slowly generating ATP. So the allostatic regulation, their activation is with fructose 1,6-biophosphate, which activates the PK, increasing activity during accelerated glucose. And then there's the inhibition, which is the ATP and alanine inhibit, which inhibit the PK, slowing glucose when the energy of the amino acids are abundant. And then there's also the covalent modification, which hormonal control, the phosphorylation and the dephosphorylation regulate the PK and the in the liver in response to the glycogen and insulin. The isozymes, the different tissues express different the PK isozymes, so the L, R, M1 and M2 with varying regulatory properties, allowing the tissues, the tissue specific and insulin. Not an insulin. I just lost my thought. So I'm just going to restate that. The isozymes, different tissues express in different PK isoforms, vary regulatory properties, allowing tissue-specific glycoses control. So the L, R, M1, and M2 in those forms. And so to go off of M2, so the M1, the isoform is considered unregulated. It exhibits a predominantly non-S-shaped Michaelis Menten, I'm hoping I'm saying these right, the kinetic response for the binding sites of all substrates under the most metabolic conditions. The M2, L, and R forms are allostatically regulated as they have sigmoidal kinetic responses to the binding substrates like PEP and FPB. This regulation occurs through feedback positive activation by FPB and feedback inhibition by ATP. The N2 isoform of Privet kinesis, so PKM2, supports anabolic metabolism and is expressed both in cancer cells and normal tissue. Cancer and normal tissues. A proliferating cells need to substances for replication like lipids, carbohydrates, nucleotides, predecessors, amino acids, and other cellular materials, or what we call the building blocks of the cells. In order to assemble the building blocks and create cell membranes and other organelles, it needs ATP and NADPH. The anabolic metabolism, it shunts the glucose. Sorry, let me go over to question 2. So the expression in cancer cells, they express less active PKM2 despite their higher glycolytic rate, which is, this serves like several functions because of the anabolic PK2 and how the cancerous functions. It can act as the PKM2 can act as a protein kinesis, with regulating gene expression and cell cycle progression. The cancer cells may also utilize the other pathways like the Warburg effect, while they prefer the use of glycosides even in oxygen's presence to produce ATP and support rapid growth. Excuse me. The glycogen storage disease is a genetic disorder affecting the glycogen storage use in the babies. Oh, my Lanta. That is not what I mean. Pardon me, I was going too fast. So in conclusion, why the PK also helps the proliferation and express in this main reason why PK2 is found in cancer cells. The different private kinesis isoforms are expressed in different tissues with specific regulatory properties created for specific metabolic needs. The cancer cells can express PKM2 isoforms due to its lower activity. This then redirects the glycogenic intermediates towards biosynthetic pathways supporting tumor growth. Now leading on to case 4. So based on the symptoms, C, glycogen storage disease, or the inability to use glycogen, would most likely be the diagnosis for the patient. And this, based on what was stated, or also reasons why I feel that the other answers weren't correct, and then I'll get into kind of to express why I believe. So the so answer A, hereditary fructose intolerance, the symptoms that were provided just don't occur after consuming fructose. In this case, the baby only consumed breast milk. So the fructose intolerance is unlikely to typically present after the fructose introduction. And then for B, the glycostemia, those symptoms are only related to galactose metabolism and normally occur with galactosis intake rather than the fasting of hemoglobin. And because of it's less likely, as it usually presents with severe newborn symptoms like vomiting, gestation, and lethargia, which are not seen in this 2-year-old's case, or in the case here. And then D, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency primarily only affects red blood cells and typically presents with hemolytic anemia, again, which is not indicated. And so reasons to back up why I believe that C is the correct answer. In the clinical and the presentation, the patient had only symptoms of jittering spells for several hours after eating. And even after the fasting periods, those have increased. So this is a symptom of glycogen storage disease, the enlarged liver, or hepatomegaly. Again, butchering these words, but this further supports that this diagnosis as a liver is where it's the glycogen is stored. Some laboratory findings, though the heparin was administered and their blood lactate, it is still elevated, suggesting that that the alternative energy pathways are activated due to the lack of readily available glucose. And there's where you have why I believe the 2-month-old female is likely to be diagnosed with the glycogen storage disease. And I will attach my sources as well as my, what is this called? I'll attach my notes. Have a good one. Bye.